Chapter 29, Detention Room. Time skip Detention Room. Johnny looks at the security camera before looking over at the team. He chuckled dryly, throwing up his hands. Are we prisoners? How did that happen? Reed thinks to himself as he is facing the wall before turning around. Apparently, they do not want us interfering with their methods. Susan has her arms crossed as she shakes her head. I can't even imagine what they're doing to him in there. I say he gets what he deserves, Ben says as he crosses his arms as well. How can you say that? Susan asks with little worry in her tone. Ben shrugs his shoulders as he stood up. I'm just saying that maybe the general is right about this. The guy was about to destroy the planet. He said so himself. Susan shook her head. But it does not make any sense. He protected me and Madison from the missile. Why would he do that? Johnny scoffed as he sat down, jealously dripping from his tone. Maybe he thinks both of you are cute. Madison turned sharply toward him, narrowing her eyes. Not funny. There's a lot more going on here. He said he was not the destroyer, Reed says as he walks around the room. Ben looks at Susan before at Reed. Maybe he lied. Reed freezes in place as he thought of something, then says, we need to get inside there and talk to him under the radar. They shared quick glances, silently agreeing. A moment later, Johnny opens the door and leans out slightly. Hey, is there any way we can get some DVDs or popcorn or something, just to pass the time? Johnny asks with a confused look on his face. I'll call it in, Mr. Storm. The soldier replies, not knowing that Susan snuck past invisible. Johnny smiles as he looks down the hall for a split moment before looking back at the soldier. Great, thank you, Semper Fi. That's the Marine Corps, we're the Army, the soldier replies confused. Johnny looks at him for a second before replying, right, I know, it is the Army, as he shuts the door. After a while, the soldiers, including Hager and Frankie, leaves the cell that Silver Surfer is in. Susan managed to get into the cell quietly. I know you are there, Silver Surfer says as he looks around before seeing Susan standing near him. What is your name? Susan asks gently. Come on, you must have a name, I'm Susan. Silver Surfer stays quiet, which makes Susan sigh before asking. You said you were not the one trying to destroy our world. Then who is? The one I serve, he finally replies, and Susan looks confused for a moment. Who do you serve? Susan asks with confusion in her tone. He goes quiet again, and Susan looks at him as she says, Look, I am trying to help you, but in order to do that, you have to tell me the truth, please. After a long while of talking, Susan was about to leave, but Silver Surfer calls her back. He hesitated, then looks at her as his tone is urgent. Galactus would see Madison's power for what it is, creation, the one force that could rival his hunger. If he learns of it, he will twist and break her, turning her into his weapon. Susan's eyes widened, her breath hitching. No, I won't let that happen. Silver Surfer bowed his head. Then guard her well for her sake and for your world. Back in the detention room. And the board is what is drawing it here, Susan tells the team. Madison straightened. Told you, it is something like Unicron. How do you fight something that can eat planets? Johnny asks as he looks over to Ben and Reed. Ben chuckles as he nudges Madison. Maybe call the Autobots. Madison does a little smile as she holds back her laugh. Reed obviously ignores them. His voice is urgent. We have to get to the board and lead it away from here before it's too late. Well, do you think the general will go for that? Ben asks as he walks over to them with Madison. Reed sighs, nodding. He'll have no choice. Madison shivered suddenly, a knot of dread twisting in her gut. Susan hesitated, then looks directly at Reed. But, he said something else, about Madison. The room went quiet. What is it? Reed asks as he crosses his arms. Susan swallows back the fear in her throat before speaking. Galactus will try and use Madison's power against us, if he knew. Johnny unconsciously moves closer to Madison, his voice fierce. We'll make sure that won't happen. Madison thinks for a moment before asking, Then, how am I supposed to fight? Reed looks at her before placing a hand on her shoulder. We'll figure something out. Ben produces an idea, and he switches his dial on his watch to turn into the thing before walking over to the door and opens it up. Hey, you! Come here, let me ask you something. The soldier looks over to Ben before being knocked out by him. Chapter 30, Overgrown Toddlers and One Jet. Time skip out of the detention room. Everyone starts to run over to the room where the board is, and they notice a door flying over to them. Johnny, without a second thought, grabbed Madison by the waist, pulling her close to him as he ducks them both out of the way. Ah, crap, Ben says as the debris hits him and Reed and flew them back into the wall. Susan, Johnny, and Madison steps out and looks over to the open hole before looking over to where Ben and Reed is. Ben, Johnny calls out. The debris falls off Ben. Okay, that one hurt. Madison does a little giggle at that. Are you okay, Benny? Susan looks around before looking back at Ben. Where's Reed? Back here, Reed said muffled as Ben looks behind him before getting out of the rumble, showing a squished-up Reed, which makes Madison cover her mouth to stop herself from laughing. My bad, Ben says as Reed looks over to him. Everyone starts running into the room where a massive hole is. Time skip, room where the Silver Surfer is. Reed, Susan says as she looks over at Hager's destroyed body. The sight made Madison's stomach twist. Reed looks away from the body as his expression turns dark. Victor, we've got to get it back. Susan puts her hands on her hips and looks over to Reed. We need to get the Surfer. He's the only one that understands its power. Madison stepped forward, her voice tight. She's right. If anyone knows how to stop Galactus, it's him. Ben turns around to face the team. Even if we break him out of this place, how are we gonna catch up to Victor? Reed looks at the team. Leave that to me. Reed presses something on his Nokia, and something happens in the Baxter building. After a while, Ben crashes through another wall and the Surfer looks straight at the team. Halt, don't move, Soldier 1 yelled as he raises his gun. Stay where you are, Soldier 2 yelled, mirroring the Soldier 1. Susan looks straight at them before using her powers to knock them off their feet as Ben breaks the glass room to get to Surfer. Pal, this is the luckiest day of your life, Ben tells him as he grinned. Madison's gaze lingered on the Surfer, her chest tightening as her energy shimmered faintly at her fingertips. For a fleeting moment, she could have sworn his head turned like he already knew she was there. Time skip out of that room. The team stops to a halt as they see Frankie holding a gun at them. What the hell is going on? Where is General Hager? Frankie asks as she looks at the team. He's dead, Reed tells her. If we don't get him out of here, we're all gonna be, Ben warns her. Frankie, Johnny says as he walks over to her, and Frankie moves her gun towards him. The world is literally at stake here. You have to trust us, please. Frankie hesitates to lower her weapon, and Madison steps forward. Frankie, I know this is insane, but right now, you either stand in our way, or you help us save every single life out there, including yours. Madison tells her as she helps lower her weapon. Time skip, rooftop. We need to get to the roof, Reed tells the team as they run up the stairs. It should be here by now. What should be here? Ben asks as he continues to run up the stairs. Ben opens the door to the outside, and everyone sees the silver, sleek jet. Holy crap, Ben says as his eyes widened. Johnny looks over to Reed before walking to the jet. Reed, this is by far the coolest thing you have ever done. He glanced at Madison, winking. Besides adopting Firefly. Johnny laughs as Every moves their way to the jet, and he checks out the logo. Hemi. Course, Reed tells Johnny before ordering. Okay, Ben, you get inside. Johnny, you fly behind us. Johnny checks out the jet. Aw, dude, you gotta let me fly this thing. Ben looks over to Johnny. Forget about it, I'm the best pilot here. I should drive. Susan, Reed, Silver Surfer, and Madison looks between them, and Madison has enough alongside Reed. Enough, we don't have time for this. Madison yells, but Ben and Johnny didn't listen until Reed snapped. "Ah, shut up, and move it," Reed orders with anger in his tone. Madison sighs with relief as Reed helped her. "I'm surrounded by overgrown toddlers." "I'm driving," Reed tells Ben and Johnny as him. Susan, Silver Surfer, and Madison walk over to the jet. Everyone gets in their respective seats. "Flame on," Johnny yells as his body bursts into flames and follows the jet. Chapter 31, The Awakening of the Phoenix. Time skip in the air. "Okay, we're now officially enemies of the United States of America," Ben tells the team. "Victor is out there somewhere with unlimited power, and we've got a giant intergalactic force that's about to destroy our planet in less than 24 hours. Did I miss anything? Besides from Firefly's use of her powers, which she can't use to protect herself. I say you got it," Johnny tells Ben as he flew next to him. Reed checks his controller in the jet. "I've got a lock on Victor's energy trail. He's headed over southeast China. Hang on." Reed flies the jet to China, and Johnny flies behind them. "Norrin rad," Norrin comes out with as he thinks to himself and Susan. Madison and Johnny snaps their head towards him. "What?" Susan asks, confused. "I was once called Norrin Rad," Norrin tells them again as his voice is filled with sorrow. Madison's gaze softened, her voice quiet but steady. "Then that's who you are, not just the surfer." "Norrin, we're gonna need your help to save our world," Susan tells him. "Do you understand?" Reed notices something wrong before a ball of power hit them, and the jet jolted violently. "Whoa," Susan yells as she grabs the armrest. "What the hell was that?" Ben yells as he looks over to Reed, who looks up and spotted Victor. "Victor, the board is drawing the destroyer here. You have to give it up," Reed yells at Victor. "He's not going to listen," Madison mutters to herself. Victor looks at Reed. "You know, I've never been the giving type, Reed." "Hold on," Reed yelled. The jet lurched again as Johnny unbuckled, flames sparking around him. He shot out after Victor, only to be slammed back by a massive wave as Victor used the board to wrench water into the sky. Madison lunged toward the window, her scream ripping out of her. "Johnny!" "We're sitting ducks," Ben yells. "We're gonna have to split up. Madison, get ready," Reed yells as he forces himself to stay focused. Susan looks straight at Reed. "What?" "This ought to be fun," Ben mutters to himself. "Stay close to me, Sue and Maddie," Reed yells at them. With the press of a button, the jet shuddered and split apart. Metal shrieked as the halves peeled away, each carrying their passengers into the storm. Madison raised her hands, her energy sparking to deflect a chunk before it crushed her. She ducked low, heart-pounding, as Reed and Susan dodged the rest. Victor uses his powers again to attack Susan, which Reed sees and flies over to help her. "He's really pissing me off," Susan yells to herself. Victor uses his powers once again to make the wall break, but Reed uses his powers to grab Susan and pulls her close to him. "Surf's up, metalhead," Ben yells as he flew over to Victor and punches him. "Victor, only the surfer can stop the destroyer, but he needs his board," Reed yells at Victor. Victor looks over to Reed. "Come and get it, Richards," Victor smirks under his mask. "Victor," Johnny yells as he flies towards him. Victor looks around him and smirks again. "Let's all go for a spin." Everyone starts to fly out of control. "Watch out," Madison yells at everyone, and everyone scattered. Susan and Madison manages to land near each other. Susan notices Norrin wasn't in his seat, and she gets out of the jet before Madison does. "Norrin," Susan yells as she runs over to him. "Catch," Victor coldly says as he throws something sharp towards Norrin. Susan stands in front of Norrin using her force field, but it was too late. The sharp pierces through Susan. "Susan," Madison screams tore through the chaos. "Sue," Reed yells as he runs over to her. "Oh my God," Johnny mutters as he lands. Madison dropped beside her sister, cradling her. Her eyes brimmed with tears, then flickered, brown giving way to burning black. Sue, oh God," Reed mutters as he holds Susan. Ben stops Johnny. Johnny, don't touch her. His eyes widened at Madison as she rose slowly. Raquette. Her eyes were black, the phoenix stirring like a storm. You need to find a way to get the board, Susan tells Reed. Reed tries to talk to her but couldn't. Okay, Susan begs Reed. The phoenix's power rippled around her, the ground cracking beneath her boots as Susan slowly dies in Reed's arms. He murdered my sister, Madison mutters to herself, her voice low, broken, and dangerous. A ring of fire burst out from her, scorching the ground in every direction. Soldiers stumbled back, shielding their eyes from the blaze. Her hands lifted, flames curling at her fingertips, her gaze locked on Victor. Reed, it's Raquette, Ben tells Reed as he backs up before looking up and noticing Galactus. Ah, crap. Victor smirked through his mask, tilting his head. Well, this is new. The phoenix's voice seemed to echo through Madison, layered over her own. Burn him. Madison's pupils constricted, a tear sliding down her cheek. No, she whispered to herself. Then another voice cut through the noise. Sunbeam. Madison looks over to the figure, and she sees a woman step out of the fire. Mom, Madison whispered. Jean Grey's voice was steady, echoing through both air and mind. I'm here, sweetheart. Tears welled in Madison's eyes as the phoenix energy flickered, the flames shrinking back. I can't control it, she said, shaking her head. It's too strong, Jean stepped closer, her presence both ethereal and grounding. Yes, you can. You're my daughter. You have my strength. As Jean and Johnny is helping Madison break free from the phoenix, Ben looks over to Reed. Victor's got to have a pulse emitter linking him to his board. We take it out, we can separate him from his board. Reed explains. Ben and Johnny looks at each other before Johnny speaks up after Madison finally broke free with the darkness spreading out like dark magic coming out of her. He's too strong for me. I could wail on him if I could get close enough, but he could see me coming from a mile away. Madison is still weak from fighting back the phoenix, looks over to Johnny. Why not try all three powers? Reed looks over to Madison and Johnny speaks up. Or just one of us. Madison looks over to Johnny. It has to be you. Reed shakes his head. We don't know what it could do to you. Johnny looks over to Madison and Ben. Let's not make this about me. He took Ben's, Reed's and Susan's hands and their powers goes to him. Madison stays on the ground, and she groans as the phoenix inside of her head screams for release, but she fights it off, but she backs up from Reed as he came closer. Not yet. Stay back. After a while, Johnny runs over to them with Ben and touches them to give them back their powers, and he notices Madison on the floor, breathing heavy, and he looks over to Reed who looks back. She told me not to come near, Reed explains before Madison got up. Johnny looks at Madison, then at Reed before nodding before noticing. Norrin flew over to them after getting his board back. You've got to go, Reed tells Norrin, but Norrin ignores him and reaches out to Susan and uses the power from his board to bring Susan back. Madison looks over to Norrin and Susan as Norrin tells them, treasure each moment with her and tell her she was right. We do have a choice. Madison watches Norrin fly up towards Galactus as her eyes burned. She reached for Johnny's hand as the phoenix is now quieter. She whispered under her breath, he's saving us by choosing. Madison lets go of Johnny, and he flies up to Norrin to help him. After helping, he falls, but before he's near the ground, Madison flies up and catches him. Now who's the damsel in distress? Madison teases him as she holds him as they hover before lowering them to the ground. Johnny looks at her, then does a faint smirk. Guess I owe you one, Firefly. Ben looks at the damage before at Reed, Susan, and Madison. Why isn't it working? Reed looks up. We were too late. A sudden sonic boom rippled through the sky. Madison's head snapped upward, her breath catching. She felt it before she saw it, the energy shift, the final pulse. Her eyes softened. He did it. Everyone turned to her. then followed her gaze to where Norrin had vanished into the storm. Susan, now alive, looks over at Reed with a small smile. "Hi." Reed makes a small smile back. "Hi." Susan looks around before looking over to everyone. "What I miss?" Reed does a little chuckle, not wanting to burden Susan of Madison, nearly losing herself for her. "Nothing important." Ben walks over to Johnny before patting him on the back. "Great job, kid." Johnny immediately panics. Whoa, before realizing, "Hey, wait, I'm not changing." Johnny tests it out by touching Ben's shoulder and sees their powers still intact, and they both laugh. Madison makes a little laugh and teases them. "Okay, love nuts, stop flirting." Everyone starts to embrace each other before walking, and Ben spoke up. "So, I guess this is it. We all go our separate ways." Reed looks over to Ben. "No." Ben looks at Reed, then at Susan. "No." Susan shook her head. "No." Johnny and Madison, almost in unison, shared a baffled glance. "No." Reed looks down before at the team. "If it wasn't for the team, the whole world would be gone by now. We can't run away from our responsibilities and the people we need to protect. This is who we are," Susan explains. Johnny throws his hands up. "That's what I've been saying." "What about having a normal life, a family?" Ben asks Reed and Susan. "Who says you have to be normal to have a family? I mean, from the beginning, me and Madison weren't exactly normal," Reed tells Ben. Susan wrapping her arms around Reed. "So, you up for another media circus wedding? 5th time's the charm." Reed sighs to himself. "No, I've got a better idea." Johnny takes that as a moment to whip his head over to Madison, and Madison looks shocked and worried at how fast he whipped his head around. Johnny's voice was steady, honest. "This time I'm bringing you, not another woman acting like you, me and that other woman. We were wrong for doing that before." Madison stared at him for a few moments, searching his face. Then slowly, she nods as a small smile tugged at her lips. "I would love that."